Hi, I'm Daniel Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. And once again, it is time to speak as witches and wizards do. And today I was thinking, today I thought the flow of energy was kind of a bit off today. There was a little bit of anger, not so much for me, but it seemed like one of those days. So I thought, we could start off talking about what it's like to live in the flow and feeling how everything flows around you as compared to people when you're surrounded by people who don't.
Right. The first thing that leaps to my mind on that subject is people who are not in flow are trying to force the issue. They're trying to make something happen and or they are focusing on things that they cannot control. Because if you really focus on stuff that is outside of your ability to control, and that's most things actually, other people's opinions, for example, other people's behavior, other people's anything, you have no control over that. And if you're trying to control it, it becomes very sticky energy and kind of anger can build up because it's frustrating. You can't get anywhere. And so I think that is a lot of that energy, whereas letting go of the need to control is one of the first keys to getting into flow. You just let it go. That's it.
Yeah. And that's the
Then
thing
you
with,
have room. Then you have room for flow.
yeah. I've learned a long time ago that you have to let it go because the minute you try, once you're aware of the flow and you try to control it, good luck. That's not happening. And it just
Exactly.
makes it
So,
harder.
well, control is the antithesis of flow. So if you're trying to control it, it goes away.
That's right.
It's like trying to catch air or something. The air is there, but if you're trying to catch it, then where is it? You don't have it in your hand. So
That's exactly true. And yeah. So I was thinking about it today because I know sometimes I'll have conversations with people and they'll be like, how come you're not doing much today? Or, like you seem to be slacking off. And it's like, well, I already know how things are moving around me. So it's like, I already know I'm not going to get progress. And the more I fight the progress or try to make progress, the harder it'll be. I've seen it far too many times.
yeah.
But the thing is, I try to sympathize from the outside perspective. What's it like for people trying looking in and seeing, from the outside looking in, saying, why is this person not doing all these 10s or 20 things they should be doing right now? And it's like, but it's hard to because it came up in a conversation a few times, and I think last week I had for the point kind of came home because I finally had a little bit of an answer, but the question was, what's it like? Like, what does it feel like to be psychic? What does it feel like to have a sense of the flow? And Mike, I was kind of thinking, like, well, I don't know what it's like to not have that sense.
Exactly.
So how do I describe to you what it's like to have the sense? Like, because you could tell people, or sorry, more specifically, the situation is people are like they're trying to figure out if they're in on the flow, and sometimes they are, but they don't realize it. So I
Well,
kind of
that's when you
back,
are,
yeah,
right? That's typically when you're in the flow is when you don't realize it.
yeah.
Things things are just going and suddenly there you are, and that was you in flow.
Hmm.
That's it. Interesting though. I did a podcast a little while ago
Right.
on the subject of laziness.
Hmm.
And my
I watched
stance,
that one.
you heard that one?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So for the listeners to this podcast, my stance is there's no such thing as laziness. It doesn't exist. Laziness is a word that people use to control other people and to denigrate someone who's taking rest. But if you are aware that today is not your day to move projects forward, what is wrong with taking rest? Why do we make that wrong? It's crazy to spend your entire life running and you end up in the same place anyway, but you missed a lot of stuff on the way if you spend all the time running. Whereas I would put money on it that you, when you're taking your break and you're just not doing because you feel the energy, I'll bet you're getting a lot of insights. You're doing a lot of non-obvious work that may or may not be apparent now, but it will come. And you have to stop still long enough to get that. If you're always running, what are you're missing the point.
Well, that's true, right? And interestingly, that too, and one of the parts of sensing the flow, or what I find is from having tried to fight the flow, is that the flow tells you so much. Like I tried to fight the flow and only to realize the reason that I shouldn't have been doing stuff is because some of the people involved in the work at hand were not receptive at all. And every attempt to make something work just compounded and made it worse and worse and worse. But people
Right.
didn't realize this, like the people in this instance I'm thinking about didn't realize, like they didn't have a sense of how they were that day. So when someone comes in, so when I came in and tried to make the work happen, it was like just one thing after another, and they would get more irritated. And it's like, okay, so that's what the flow was telling me, right? It's like that you're not prepared, and there's nothing I can do. Anything I try to do will just make it worse for you. I mean, and I am a compassionate listener, and I sit around and I like try to feel out, what people are going through. But there's times where there's nothing you can do, and you just kind of got to let it go and sit back.
And this is where human design comes in very, very handy. Because if you know your design, then you'll know what the signs are of this is not for you. And 70% of the world's population are generators of one sort or another. So if you're one of the 7 out of 10, then frustration, immovability on something is a very clear stop sign that this is either not for you or it's not for you the way you're doing it. And so you have to reassess and figure out from your sacral center, which is very much a gut instinct, and it's a hell yes or it's a hell no. There's no wavering, there's no like, maybe, you don't have a maybe center. It's a yes or a no. And if it excites you, if you're like, yeah, I want to do this podcast, yeah, I want to co-host, yeah, I want to talk about this subject, then you're on. But if you're trying to make a thing happen and it's not working, then there's every good chance that that is your signal to stop and reevaluate and check in. Does this actually excite me? And sometimes you can start a thing and it's a yes, and then it becomes a no. And it can become a no for a variety of reasons. Environment changes, you complete the task, something else shifts. When things change, sometimes your yes becomes a no. And we live in a society that says, but you can't do that. You have to keep going. And again, I ask, why? Why is that important to do? Because it's really not. If it's not working for you, then do everybody a favor and don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, like, if I could think of any lesson I've drawn from my life, especially in my practice, it's the yes. It can start off a yes. It can then become a no when criteria is met. Like you do tasks for
Right.
certain reasons, and then once those reasons have been accomplished, that task is no longer necessary, or even that relationship is no longer necessary, or where you live is no longer the place to live, or and once you're on top of it, it's weird, for other people to understand it, but it's kind of I'm at a stage where it seems like how to give that right properly. Like today, there was a bug sitting on my screen door. And instead of killing or anything like that, like I don't go out of my way to kill bugs, but I also don't go out of my way not to kill them, right? I just kind of from a philosophical perspective, but not a visceral, just philosophical. I'm like, you know what? If you don't need to kill something, don't kill it. But actually today I kind of got like a little piece of paper there, picked it up, and I brought it to the door and I was thinking to myself, I could have just killed it. But part of me is now of that mindset whereas I would have felt stupid for killing it. Like it
Mm.
wasn't doing anything, it was actually trying to go outside. It's just because it couldn't get outside. So Here would have been me coming along and killing it for no other reason, ending its life for no other reason than it, you know, I felt inconvenienced by its presence,
right?
or I thought it
And
was icky or whatever. You know what I mean? It just and I'm now that like that way with flow, where it's like, okay, well, the flow is telling me not to do it. It just seems stupid to fight it.
yeah, I mean, again, we live in a society that really pushes struggle as being a good thing, right? Like, if you're not struggling, you're not trying hard enough. You should push, push, push. Again, I'm going to ask why. I question these things because this is something that's become a societal norm, and we take it in our personal lives, and yet it serves no useful purpose whatsoever. If you're struggling, you're just draining your energy. It's like being a hamster on a wheel.
Mhm.
You're not getting anywhere, but you're flogging yourself to death. Like there's really no point. And sometimes you just, let it go, relax, and let the truth, however that appears to you, to drop in. I was in Paris last week,
Right.
and one of the things I did while I was there was I tried escargot. Now I've lived in Europe before, and
Hmm.
I always kind of avoided trying it. I just really didn't like the concept. This time I thought, okay, I'll try it. So I had some. And for anybody that doesn't know escargot, it's snails basically.
Right.
And so I tried those, and I had a few, like three or four. And what I got from that experience was, first of all, it tastes fine. It's like butter
Mhm.
and garlic, so
Yeah.
okay. Um, and I like butter and garlic, so that's fine. But I looked at these little shells, and I thought, wow, that's like 4 lives.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm going to do that again. It was interesting to me to try, but I was very aware that even though they're snails, I
Yeah.
consider that they're sentient, and this 4 beings lost their lives so I could try them. I didn't feel very comfortable with that. And I hadn't thought of it until I had them. But it was like, yeah, I don't need to do that again now. That's
Well,
okay. And I'm not vegetarian by any means, but it's just that dropped in for me in that moment.
yeah, it's this can almost be an episode about what it's like to live in this kind of, well, I guess it is. But yeah, like the worldview kind of changes, but it's not that just I'm trying something different, or like it's just the I should have always been doing this. Like having no, that's not the right way to word it. Once you're in it, you're not aware of everything, but you've got a good grasp, because there's just so much sensory information you can take in and so much storage you can do with your material body for the time you have it. But
A
there's
lot
a
drops
lot of
in.
awareness.
A lot drops in. It just depends on what you're open to, really.
Right.
And again, in order to be open to receiving information from the flow, you have to be not struggling somewhere, right? Like if you're struggling to get something done, you're pushing against a door that needs to be pulled to open, then you're missing all the things that you could be receiving because your energy is directed into something completely pointless. And we
Yeah.
do that a lot.
Yeah. It's funny because this weekend, as you know from the background that was in the on the Zoom calls there, that room I had painted like 10 years ago, I was out of town, but I had come back into town to grab something. I had decided, you know what, I'm gonna come into town. And it turns out I didn't really need it, but what I realized is I needed that travel time.
Mm,
That travel time let me deal with things that I was putting aside that I wasn't dealing with. And it was the trip because it's 5 hours round trip there and
mm,
back. So I came, but I stayed overnight and then I went back. But it gave me that time to just sit down and be with the things I wasn't dealing with. Grieves I didn't, things I didn't grieve for, and ideas I didn't allow in. And I thought, wow, like, because it felt pointless. Like the whole time I came back to pick up what I need to pick up, it felt like a waste. I'm like, why am I here? Like, but it was on the way back that it was all of a sudden I was open to the flow, and it was like, there you go. This is what I
mhm.
needed. I needed this time just because I like to travel. I like hitting the open road. So I like that time in between places where you can see the scenery, go around, just that raw time where you get to be with yourself in the environment. and it's what I needed, and I didn't realize until, but like, because I felt to myself like that's a 5 hour trip, and I'm already out of town, so why am I coming back just to get something? Because I was going to actually be longer, but then it turned out
Mm.
it actually came back, so I'm back to my plain background.
Right.
but uh, but that was absolutely needed. But I was thinking to myself like I'm wasting gas. I'm taking time out coming from just to pick something up. That ended up not being necessary, but that trip was needed. That
Yeah.
time, and it's time I wouldn't have asked for on my own. Like I said, I know I'm here. I'm not going to go back, but oh, I had an excuse now. I have to, we're planning on staying longer, so okay, I'm going to go get some stuff I need.
Right. I have a client who was trying very hard to use sort of spreadsheets
Mm-hmm.
and structure in her business and using them for a lot of things, not just strictly necessary places.
Right.
And I actually worked with her on human design, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
started from there, and discovered that her creative flow is going to happen when she's, sitting by a lake with a cup of coffee, skimming stones or something. But she needs to be in a place where she can totally relax and she's not doing anything structured. That unstructured, zoning out kind of thing, that's when she's actually going to get her insights and the important information. It was work to get her to stop doing the structured stuff and just try. Just go and try. And she lives in Italy, so she's near a lake. She's got a
Right.
vineyard and a lake and all that kind of stuff around her. So she tried it. And she said, wow, I had some brilliant ideas for my business while I was sitting at the lake today. I'm like, wow, really? Okay, that's very cool. Because that's what works for her. But someone had told her, this is the way you do business. You have to have these, spreadsheets and stuff. But it's part of what she could do, but it's not where her insight comes from. It's not where her creativity is. And I think we just don't pay enough attention to where we are when we receive that. I do a thing called asking powerful questions, and this is where you talk to your subconscious, basically. And the questions are key because you're not talking to your conscious brain. If you knew if your conscious brain could answer you, it
Mm-hmm.
already would have. So that's
Right.
not the part you need to talk to. But the subconscious, the thing that drives the car when you're not paying
Mm-hmm.
attention because you're
Right.
zoning out someplace, that's the part of the brain you want to address. And the questions need to be clear and in a very positive way, not negatives. Doesn't deal with negatives. The brain doesn't register negatives. So something like, who do I need to talk to tomorrow in order to create this new project by the end of the week? Right? So you got a lot of specifics in that question. And then you just go to sleep with that question in your mind. You will wake up with the answer. There's no question. You will wake up with the answer. It'll just drop in. Sometimes I get that at around 3 in the morning, which is a little irritating, but okay. I at least will, boom, suddenly I know, the person will come into my mind or the thing I need to do will come into my mind. And that's something about being in the flow and addressing your subconscious to get the answers. And anybody that's listening to this, I invite you to try that. Be very specific about what you're asking. It's not and realistic, like, how do I make $100,000 by the end of the week? Probably isn't going to get you anywhere. It'll just get you some weird dreams or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a specific task and you want a path to it, then ask specific questions about that path. Either who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do? Who do I need to phone? Be as specific as you can and put a time frame on it. Because we need to put
Yeah.
time frames on things because the subconscious and flow
Mm.
doesn't have a time frame. So if you leave it open, so will it.
Yeah. Actually, that's one of the interesting things that I figured at some point we were going to address. If you don't pick a specific time frame, it makes for weird answers. I remember one time I was like, okay, I was working on something, but I knew at some or not working something. I was working out at the gym and I knew I felt the vibe at some point I'm going to quit. And like I didn't really want to the time, but I'm like, okay, how much time do I have? You know? And then I got November. And I'm like, well, it's September, like November, like that's just right around the corner. Well, it wasn't that November, it was next November.
Mm.
And I'm like, so here
Yeah.
thinking it's over in November, right? So I might as well prep for it. And then it's like, oh no, it's next November.
But the fun thing with those kind of questions is you practice them. Do
Yeah.
them every night and
Hmm.
practice fine-tuning it until you get the kind of answer that you're looking for. And I don't mean the answer fits your narrative,
Right.
but just that the answer is workable. And then try it. So this is trusting your intuition.
Hmm.
This is trusting the inner knowing. This is literally what witches and wizards do, is you tap into what can't be seen, but you know it.
Right.
It's just there. And the question is, will you trust that knowing? Because so many times as kids, we're taught not to trust that. Instead of following your intuition, which might not be convenient for the adults,
Hmm.
you're told, use your common sense, listen to me, pay attention, da da da. And you're pulled away from your inner knowing into an external world of what other people think. Whereas when we can get back to a sense of, I know that this is what I need to do, or I feel this thing. It might not even be in words. It depends on how you receive things. I'm very visual. I get a lot of pictures. And I can get, I had the most incredible dream the other night that I was exhausted when I woke up, but it told me a lot. And it was a very active dream. Um, and it gave me a lot of answers in that dream, but it was pictures. It's not words for me. Somebody else will hear things, but they won't see things. Clairsentient,
Hmm.
clairvoyant, etc., etc. Which Claire are you?
Yeah.
And are you tapped into that? And you need to be able to stop for a while and pay attention to find out which it is and to get used to listening to it, right? So if we're always in the struggle and we're always pushing because nobody wants to be called lazy, then you're missing this aspect of your life. She's actually a big part of life.
Hmm. It's funny when you say how, like, I've noticed over the years, and I know I'm trying to think, I've discussed this a lot of times recently, but so I always have a sketchbook. But
Mm.
another thing I do is not just draw, but I write. But I do neither professionally, although I have done some professionally, like art and writing professionally, but I don't. But what I notice is whatever I fixate on when I'm drawing or when I'm writing, like if I'm writing a short story or a story, I never publish anything, but the characters that I'm focusing on are usually important to something. And I'll end
Mm.
up doing a character sketch and I'll write different scenarios to see how they react and stuff. And then it's like and then I'll find out maybe a year, 2, 3 years down the road, it's like oh, that was my prep for the next thing I'm doing. It was
And
almost like
that can
having
be
a briefing beforehand.
that kind of channeling can be really, really useful. For example, my husband channels
Hmm.
his books. He's written 33 books
Right.
so far. He's on 34. He doesn't plan them. He channels them and he just writes and writes and writes and writes.
Yeah.
And he said he's never known writer's block. He doesn't believe it's a thing. It's just a question of, what aspect are you doing right now? But he just writes, and sometimes, not too often, but sometimes he'll get up in the middle of the night and say, okay, I just have this thing I have to go put down. And he'll go write the thing and then, go back to bed. But
Right.
it's it's being in contact with those characters and that information that they want you to put out on paper. These are his books, and he writes really good books.
I'm going to show you something funny. I know people listening aren't going to be able to see this, but I'm going to show it to Michaela anyways. But so I do automatic writing every once in a while, just to,
Mm.
another tool in my arsenal. But I've allowed my the things that the spirits I work with to have some free reign, and I don't know how well you can see it, but you'll notice the my spirits I work with start to write with emojis,
Yeah,
and we see the little hearts they draw sometimes.
yeah.
The one dragon, I think when I first started working with her, she drew herself. I said, "What am I working with this time out?" And she drew a dragon in my
Cool.
notes. So I
I
tend
like
to
it.
do writing and drawing to help me whenever I'm at a loss for what to do. That's what I do to help
Right. So
connect with the
that's how it
flow.
comes through. That's how it
Yeah.
comes through for you. And yeah, we all have our different ways of doing that.
Yeah.
But
That's why I use
mine
a
is very
multicolored
visual.
pen, because if I'm working with three at a time, it's like, okay, you're one color, you're another color, you're another color.
Right. And I write everything down, not typing, but handwriting, because that's people lose something when they type it. They really do. That flow from the brain to the hand is important.
It
And
is.
yeah, I find that typing it out doesn't work anywhere near as well for me. But that's my style. You know, everybody that's listening is going to have different things that resonate for them. And the key there is don't try and be like somebody else. Find you and be you.
Well, that's
Because
right. You're designed to like for well, designed, I guess is the best way
yeah,
to put it. You're designed to be you, to do the thing you do, and you can learn from other people, but you have to be very good at adapting because you can learn from anyone. Like I said in one of the earlier episodes, there's times where not being you can be of benefit, but you can't do it for extended period of times. And one of the times I expressed one for safety. Sometimes you just kind of, know when to hide in plain sight, but to learn a skill that you don't have. And while you're imitating to learn that skill, you can't do it permanently because one, you have to
mm,
learn to adapt it to yourself, right? I use the example of a child learning to sneak up on people by imitating a cat. Well, at first it works, but over time, you're not a cat. So the tricks that a cat used was good to show you the principles, but over time, you don't have padded paws, you're not a quadruped,
right.
you have different things to do. So you eventually have to bring it into yourself and you have to own it and make it your own because you can't continue to imitate. Even though you can imitate to learn, you have to eventually come back to your authentic self.
And now what's interesting with what you're just saying there, what leaps up to me is people with autism learn to mask. And they learn to mask early on. And I know a number of people with autism who are now adults, and each one of them has significant issues because of the masking. It's
Right.
led to depression, it's led to anxiety, and it's led to a sort of loss of self-identity
Mm-hmm.
because they've been masking so long. And some people want to not mask and they don't know how anymore because they've been doing it so much.
Right.
This is a sort of, again, it's a societal pressure to appear like everybody else, to conform in your
Mm-hmm.
behavior and so on, which personally drives me nuts. Like, I really wish that we could just quit this nonsense of everybody needs to fit in a box because we don't anyway. And if you look in social media, for example, everybody's screaming about authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here I am being authentic, and you can be authentic so long as you fit in.
Yeah.
Seriously, people, come on. You know, somebody with autism should be acceptable exactly as they are and not have to mask. But so many do, and because they do it long term, it becomes very problematic. Anxiety and depression are two big things that come up, um, and all kinds of functioning issues in society because they look one way and present
Right.
this way because it's masking, but when they receive from other people, it's very hard to handle because they're not who they appear to be. And
That's right.
that's the danger of trying to take on somebody else's way of doing things, somebody else's flow. It's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
You may be simpatico, you may not. Doesn't matter. It's really not the point. The point is to find your way and to do that and not worry about the other people. I call the good opinion of other people goop, right?
Yeah.
Good opinion of other people.
Yeah.
And goop is unnecessary. It's something that gets in the way because you tend to spend time thinking, what's this person going to think? What will they think about that? So you're making assumptions about what you think this other person's going to think. None of this happened yet. And you could be absolutely perfect. And somebody's going to have an issue with that because it's their lens. It's not about you. It's what they're seeing through their lens. And so, when somebody can give you an opinion and tell you all kinds of things about what you should and shouldn't be doing. But what they're telling you, I always find it interesting because what they're telling you is a lot about themselves and their own
Yeah.
limitations. It's got nothing to do with you. They're just throwing it at you, but you don't have to catch it. It's not yours.
That's the thing. It's funny. It's a lesson I learned at a young age that's made me have an easier life than my siblings. It's like that I knew how my parents function. So it's like, okay, well, if this one does this, that's because they're in a bad place. So I'm like, I don't take it personal because I realize, like, I'm not overjoyed to be the target of any excessive emotions, but it's like, oh, it's
Hmm.
not me. It's not my fault. I don't take it personal. It's like I don't enjoy the situation, but I don't bear the weight of it beyond the
Right.
interaction.
And I think that's in people overcoming traumas, particularly childhood traumas, one of the first things you have to figure out and really take on board is it wasn't personal. You happened to be in the
Mm.
way.
Yeah.
You happened to be there. But anybody who was in that position would have had the same thing. It wasn't you. And, it took me years to learn that,
Mhm.
frankly, but it made such a difference because all those people that did things that I'm feeling badly about and
Right.
feeling still connected to them because they did this terrible thing to me. It's like, actually, no, they were in an awful space and they did stuff that, they wouldn't have chosen had they been in a good space, and I happened to be in the way.
Yeah.
And that, when you take yourself out of that equation, it just becomes so much easier to
Hmm.
process and move forward. And I find people who've got trauma will often resist that at first. They don't want to give up the narrative that, for me, this terrible thing happened. But honestly, your life will be so much better if you figure out that it wasn't about you. You just happened to be there. And that's
Yeah.
that's a very different energy, right?
It's this is where I find, like, so speaking as witches and wizards do, and it's the understanding of how much things aren't about you, but being
Right?
fine with it.
Yeah. It's
That's
it's
the
actually great when it's not about you.
Yeah. And that's, I think, is the big thing between going over from, well, okay, we'll say, because I don't like putting negatives on things in terms of naming, but like when you're not a witch or a wizard or any other of those spiritual love or states of being, it's like your life is harder than it needs to be because you're centered in yourself. And don't get me wrong, as me personally as a wizard, I'm pretty self-centered, but I'm not in the same way. Like, I understand it's not about me, what other people are doing. And even frankly, for that matter, when someone's very nice to me, sometimes I know it's not about me. I know it's about they're feeling good and they're doing something. It's not that there's not moments where it's not about you, but for the most part, people go through their lives focused on themselves. And then you happen to be there a lot
Well,
of
it's like your life is a movie.
times. Hmm.
You're the movie star. Everybody else is an extra, and everybody's life is like that. So you're an extra in somebody
Hmm.
else's movie. If you happen to have a good role where you're having fun, then that's cool. And if you don't, then that's not so cool. But it's you're not the primary mover in somebody else's story. They are. And we're built that way. That's how human beings are. So again, with the society, oh, you're taking rest, that's so selfish,
Hmm.
you should be doing something. So no, not really. And if I am being selfish, what's it to you? You're just you're a secondary role in my play. So, you know,
Yeah.
go off stage now. I'm doing my thing here. It's just it's a different take on it.
Hmm.
Um, but really, it's the only one that makes sense as far as I can see. Because what else would you be other than the prime role in your own life?
Yeah. And it's easy once once you accept that, just how, like, if you're someone who likes to be in service of other people, well, when you realize you're not the prime motivator in their life, you're a bit play you're, well, not a bit player, but
Yeah,
you're,
bit player. Sure,
yeah,
why not?
you're supporting cast, so you're doing what supporting cast does. You support, but you don't carry the story.
Right.
You help the story move along when it's your turn, but the
Sure.
main character is the one carrying the story. There's their responsibility to see the movie from beginning to end. Your support, you help adding certain elements to it, but that's the limit of what your power in their life is.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think the more people can get in touch with that, the less they'll be worried about everybody else's opinion, and the more we can really be authentic as opposed to the way it's that word is becoming aversive to me because it's been used so often
Hmm.
and incorrectly.
Yeah.
But you can really stand in the power you've arrived with and use it and not be worried about what you think other people might think. We get really stuck in this weird narrative that never comes to fruition, or if it does, maybe you did a few things to set the stage. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Point is, you cannot control those things. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you let go of the things you can't control, which other people and their
Hmm.
opinions is a big part of that, then you have space to get into flow, to get into touch with things. Maybe look at nature, maybe go and do, people talk about witchcraft as though it's this sort of mystical thing that you do at midnight when there's a full moon and you're all
And
naked
you're
and
sky
dancing around a
clad.
fire or something, right?
Yeah. And you're sky
Like,
clad.
which, could be fun,
Yeah.
but that's not what it's all
Yeah.
about. And just being in touch with nature and finding what lights you up, what you can use in your day, in your practice, sometimes creating a beautiful picture, a mandala out of
Mm.
plants and
Yeah.
petals and leaves and what have you, sticks, feathers, whatever it is that comes to you, that is a creative process and it can bring all kinds of flow to you. So, is there some kind of weird magic that you need to be burned at the stake for, or are you just in tune with what's around you, the forces that you live in? It's rather arrogant to think that we're the only things that are, important. Everything on this planet is. So to ignore nature and to ignore what it brings is rather arrogant, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's and what I was saying earlier about the insect. It's like I'm going to kill this thing, but this thing has its own whole life. Like,
Yeah.
and I treat food the same way. Like, some people are like, "Oh, I don't know how to shake this food," and I go, "Well, okay, I'm going to put it to you this way. Nothing thinks it's food. Nothing. Doesn't matter if it's part of your diet as a species. That thing you're eating doesn't think it's food.
No,
It
it
doesn't even
doesn't
think
want
it's
to be
food when it's
eaten.
dying. It just thinks I'm being killed." Like,
Yeah, and it doesn't want to be eaten, whether it's
yeah,
plant or a being.
that's
None of
right.
it wants to be eaten. Plants have lectins so that you won't eat them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So like even
Plants.
though my diet hasn't been perfectly adapted, it's making a difference because now I'm like, ever since I said that to a client, it's like, oh no, I can't shake it. It's like that idea. It's like you're right, it doesn't want to be eaten, so it's my responsibility to eat properly, so that I'm
Uh-huh.
only taking what I need from
Yeah.
from
And
so that
and
everything can go about its life.
and your body does not want to consume chemicals because that's toxic. It's poison. Why would you eat it? In fact, when I'm talking to clients, I will typically differentiate between items that are consumable
Mm,
and edible.
yeah.
Real food is edible. The chemical crap that they have in the
Mm,
stores, in boxes and cans and stuff, that is consumable,
consumable.
meaning
Yeah.
you can ingest it and it won't kill you right away, but it's certainly not doing you any favors. And your poor body is trying to figure out, what do I do with this? Where am I going to put this? And it stores it someplace because it cannot process it. And
That's
it's
right.
very popular to say, oh, well, if I have too much of this, I'll just pee it out or something. I don't know what you think your kidneys are doing, but they are not that big. They have a very limited range and they are not getting rid of all those toxins.
Mm,
So, don't assume that you're just going to pee stuff out because
yeah.
also you really don't have a lot of space to be doing that. So I don't know how people envisage that works, but I can tell you as a former nurse and somebody who's very well aware of anatomy, that is not how it works. That's just not what it does. So your body stores it because it doesn't know what else to do with it. And then
Well,
you're
and
walking around, tick, tick, tick,
yeah,
ticking time bomb.
yeah. And it's funny because I started taking a holistic nutrition course. I never finished it, but it brought me to WildFit. So I think it was more of a
Nice.
gateway thing. But I do have all the books, but we were doing physiology and anatomy. And you start to realize how much well, you got hormones that your hormones basically tell your body what to do. So even if you're eating or drinking, like if you drink too fast, you can't kick in that hormone that tells your body to absorb the water. So then it goes into overflow.
The other thing is if you're consuming chemicals,
Hmm.
that affects how your hormones are produced, which hormones are produced, how much, etc., etc. And anybody that's not that aware of their hormones, I can tell you it makes a difference to absolutely everything from your mood to your metabolism to your sex hormones to everything in your
Yep.
body is ruled by hormones. And they are chemically created by the body. The brain sends signals to say, hey, create this, create that. So if you are taking in a whole lot of chemicals, you're messing with that transportation system. You're blocking the road unnecessarily and giving yourself all kinds of problems that in this society, you're going to end up medicating.
Right.
And actually, you don't need to. You know, I had a client in doing WorldFit
Hmm.
who recently discovered that he'd got this big story about coffee and caffeine. And, and we discovered, yeah, there are a few energy drinks getting in there as well. And that's a problem all on its own. But let's just focus on the caffeine for now.
Right.
And I persuaded him to just, take a break for a couple of weeks and let's see what happens. Who are you without this? And what happens? So he began with the story of, I need coffee in order to be productive. I have 3 jobs I'm doing, and
Hmm.
I've got all this stuff. I need the coffee, and I need the extra caffeine because I work out and all this. Okay, so we took the caffeine away little by little, and then he discovered, oh hey, you know what? I'm not more productive with caffeine. I actually get a lot of anxiety, and then I start procrastinating and wheel spinning because of the anxiety. And he could tie it to the caffeine because he'd taken a break. And then he went back to caffeine, and it was like, oh, that's not doing what I thought it was doing.
Yeah.
So you don't know how you function without the chemicals if you're used to them. So how many people, for
Yeah.
example, are taking medication for anxiety when actually they just need to stop the caffeine? Ooh.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Which
At
of
the
those
risk
would
of
be
being,
easy?
at the risk of being an episode like that, caffeine poisoning is actually misdiagnosed as many other mental illnesses. You
Sure.
have schizophrenia, well, anxiety for sure. But what was there? I went through a whole list one time because someone was telling me their doctor was putting them on a very, I can't remember the name of it, but you're only supposed to take one, and she was on three. And it takes a long time to wean off of it, even when you take it. And only one dose a day is effective. The two other doses don't have an extra effect. They don't compound in your day. So, and I was looking at her caffeine intake and I was like, well, you could be, well, I mean, there were other issues. There was like someone had recently died and there was all this stress and an abusive relationship. But I'm like, okay, you drink an excessive amount of caffeine. So first get rid of that. And the rest will have to be dealt with, not within my power to deal with, but before you get put on medication that is harm to you and is hard to wean off, and you're
Right.
taking more dosages than is actually effective, then
Also, medications are still chemicals for the
yeah,
body to deal with, and there is side effects to everything. There's nothing without a side effect. So if you don't have to take it by removing something else,
mm-hmm.
that also leaves you available for that flow that we've been talking about, for
Right,
that dropping in of things. If your brain isn't preoccupied with dealing with this chemical insult, which is things like a sugar hit or caffeine, these kind of things. If it's not having to deal with that, then you have so much more available for the world around you, right?
right,
So there's a lot of benefit to experimenting and discovering who you are without those substances. And then if you still want to go back to it, knock yourself out. You know what you're doing now because you have the information. And I'm not going to tell anybody they can't do a thing. That's not my style. But I love for people to know, to have that information. Who are you without this? How are you without this? What do you choose now? And
that's
that's
right.
why I love WildFit, because it's all about choice, and I'm here for that. because me imposing my will on somebody else is wildly uninteresting to me, and it's a one of those things where you're just going to struggle again, right? You're pushing on that door that needs to be pulled. It's not yours.
Yeah. You know,
You
when you
can't
said
force that issue.
yeah, when you said that, that reminded me of one of the things I was thinking about talking about today. Because, like I said before, right, when I was looking for a witch, well, I was on Reddit, so I was looking for like these different subreddits, witchcraft, spellcasting, and stuff. And the one thing I'd come across, because it now a few had shown up in my feed, and it's people casting love spells. And I was like, why are you casting these? Like, what does this do for you? You have someone who
Oh,
doesn't legitimately love you, but they're now enthralled to you. What is the point of that?
oh yeah, no, that's one of those things. Again, in witchcraft,
Yeah,
you try really hard not to tell other people what to do with it,
yeah,
but because it's your personal practice, you do your thing. But love spells is like, are you really sure you want to do that one? It's something that it might sound good on the surface, but you really got to dig into that, because do you want the repercussions? Do you really want
well,
the
that's
repercussions of that one? And as you said, that person's enthralled to you, but they still don't love you per se. And do you actually love them if you're willing to alter
their
their
personality. Yeah,
conscious will,
yeah.
right? If you're willing to mess with that, what else are you willing to mess with?
Hmm.
And what will you do if when it bounces back at you? You got to be prepared for what goes around comes around, right?
Well, that goes to the thing of emotions, right? Someone loving you doesn't mean you're going to get what you want out of it. Because if that person has really bad behavior around love, if they're like really possessive and you've made them fall in love with you, you've not brought up, and if they're, you know, it doesn't make them any less them per se. Like if they're frustrated and
Right.
they're violent, they're still frustrated and violent. If they're obsessive, they're still obsessive. If they're like controlling, they're still controlling because they're acting on that emotion, but this is how they would act on that emotion.
Right, exactly. Which is a really good point when someone's considering messing with stuff like that. Just what are you bringing in? Are you really sure you want that? Because maybe what you're seeing right now is the best you're going to get with that person. Maybe that is the ideal. And your sort of superficial feelings, which generally speaking, if it's that strong and it's that immediate, it's lust more than love. And
Right.
just hang on a minute, it'll go away.
Yeah.
It's it's not something to alter another person's path
Mm.
with. And think about it. How would you like somebody to mess with you in that way? And how would you feel about it if you ever figured it out? Which is always possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of things, it's yeah, it's a sort of very teenager kind of, I want to play with this, a teenager wants to do that, but an adult doing it,
Yeah.
it's like, you might want to stop and really consider the wider implications of this and the ramifications. And as you said, really key is now you're going to get that person as they show up
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. Now we know not everybody shows up in a love and light kind of way, and you're going to get whatever they bring. So do you really want that? Are you sure you want that?
Yeah. You bound that person to you, and now you have that person is bound to you, and
Yeah,
therefore all the motivation that goes along with that.
that can be so problematic, and if they're not in tune with you, there's a reason for it, and that's fine. That's okay. Let
Mm-hmm.
them be who they are and you be who you are. Don't go around messing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's this whole, this is their control, this is yours. As soon as you use magic to
Mm-hmm.
try and control another person, which love spells are,
Mm-hmm.
then you're messing outside your lane. You're going in the wrong direction with that. As far as, I don't know, ethics, morals, pick a thing.
Yeah.
It's just you're not in your lane. Now, I'm not going to tell you you can't do the thing, but I am going to say you might want to think about it
Yeah.
a
And you put a
lot.
responsibility on yourself because now you have to deal with this.
And it is a responsibility. And do you really want to get in somebody else's story in that way?
Mm-hmm.
It's It's not something I would do, put it that way. I would not mess with that because you can be very effective in enthralling someone to you. And you are more than likely going to deeply regret that, if not dead certain.
Mhm.
It's just not, yeah. And you don't know who that person is in that condition,
Well,
right?
that's the
You
thing,
only know
right?
what you've seen.
Yeah. That's the whole thing to it, right? Like, because when I look at the spell, like, because there's like, I think one I follow a few. One is like just spells, one spellcasters, one is spellcasters for hire, and I'm just looking through them, and I'm like, I get protection, right? I get trying to, like get someone to avoid you. Fine, you're protecting yourself. But when you're trying to draw people to you, like that's you're pretty much on the offensive here, and you're pulling people towards you, and that's a responsibility because they can't now do it for themselves. You have now taken
Taking
over
their
that
free
decision
will.
making for them.
Yeah, you're taking their free will.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. That really isn't. For me, spells that are sort of return to sender type stuff. Really, I like those.
Mhm.
I'm in favor of that. If you're having a problem with somebody coming after you,
Mhm.
return to sender is just like a mirror reflecting it back, right? I don't accept this crap from you. Here you go. And you can do that and be very effective. If somebody's, you've got a colleague at work who's making your life hell, you can totally do a freezer spell on them and just stop them from doing that. But it's more of a stop.
Mhm.
I'm not changing their free will. I'm stopping it from affecting me. That's a different thing. To put up a barrier and say stop is perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. That's my take on it. So I would have no hesitation. But trying to change how another person sees you or sees life or sees anything, no, that's their path. They got to figure that out.
Well, that's the thing, right? And it's kind of almost interesting why you have people centered out. These forces exist in the universe, and then there's why there people come along who have the ability and the insight to use these forces properly.
Right. And the other thing to consider, is we arrive here with a set of lessons to learn. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people agree with that, if not not everybody does. But if you're in the line that you and I are talking about,
Hmm.
then you probably do, right? You have a set of lessons that you've come to learn. Well, you also have people around you, souls around you, who said, I'll help you with that.
Right.
I'm going to come and I'm going to do this thing. Now, it might not look helpful. It might not feel helpful, but it's the thing you need to get you where you're going. So this can be true of things like traumatic childhoods, for example. I
Hmm.
grew up in an environment that was very unsafe. It was not at all ideal for any child ever. Just, no, I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Right.
But what that situation did for me was it taught me about people's behavior from being a toddler. I was learning to figure out what signs meant that we're going to do next. And I became a behavior analyst later.
Hmm.
And I'm all about working with people with behavior. I'm also an advocate for people who have suffered an injustice. And I will be very, very strong about that. My childhood set me up for that, how I am with that now. So maybe that was the role that those events and those people played to get me where I am now.
Well, and there's that, right?
So, if you start messing with it and changing what people are to you and how they're showing up to you, then you're kind of messing with this. And I'm not sure that's to anybody's advantage, including your own.
Right. That's why I say like there's people with the insight, like who come around and have the insight. And so if this push is needed, fine. You're responsible with basically using this energy in the flow properly and knowing full all the consequences and the responsibilities. But when you're just trying to come into it and go, oh, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that. Like, no, 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 no. That means that you're already telling me you're not responsible enough to use it yet, right? It's the
Right.
people shouldn't be allowed to go in politics because they want to go in politics.
Funnily enough, that leads nicely to what I was just about to say, which is if you are coming from a place of I want X,
Mm,
that word want is a red flag,
right.
right? If I want this, therefore I'm going to make it happen this way, then, check your motives and have another look at that because you're not doing it for a greater benefit. And when we do stuff that only benefits us and has no bigger purpose at all, then typically speaking, that can be a little more sticky, right? Now, don't get me wrong, you taking a rest day, for example, that is benefiting other people because you're not tipping up their day and you are bringing in more knowledge and wisdom that you can share with them later. So it is for the bigger picture. Whereas if you just said, well, these people need me today and they're expecting me to help them, but screw them, I'm not going to do it. That's a very different energy, right? That's
Mhm.
a whole different thing. And that's more of an I want. It's all about me when you're doing it that way,
Mm.
rather than this is what's necessary right now. It's a bigger picture. Kind of you have to play with it a little bit to get the nuances, but I know you understand. The listener may need to play with it a little. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to make your mistakes in life and you have to learn on the things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we all do. I mean, that's one of the things we're here for, right? Is to learn. And one of the best ways to learn is to make mistakes.
Mm. And
It's
you
what
know
it
what,
is.
Michaela? I think we're gonna have to make a part two on this. I
Okay.
think our allotted time this time out has come to an end,
Yes. Sadly, I have to go to
fortunately,
the
because
dentist.
this should be our part two, definitely, because we did hit
Yeah.
on something. I'm sorry I didn't hit that at the beginning, but like I said, the flow today wasn't completely perfect, but for things, but
Yeah. Let's do a part two. Absolutely.
okay. So for this week, there won't be an assignment because we're going to do a part two on this subject, and then I'll put an assignment on that one. But for now, we have to say goodbye. So till next time,
Until next time. This time always goes so quickly. Wow.
it does. It
It
does.
does.
But thank you for again, thank you for coming and making the effort, Mikhaila, for coming out.
It's always a pleasure to do this podcast with you. It really is.
All right, to everyone else, see you later.
See you later.